Have you ever had the feeling that someone around you plays dirty with your mind? That everything you do, no matter how good, is never enough? That you're always trying to please, while the other seems to feed on your pain? If this sounds familiar, chances are you're dealing with a narcissist, and today, you're going to figure out how to turn that game around. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in psychology, said that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but rather by making darkness conscious. And that's exactly what you're going to do now. We'll shine a light on the shadows of narcissistic behavior, and more importantly, we'll show you how to manipulate it back, consciously, strategically, and powerfully. In this video, you'll learn 5 well-known steps, based on deep psychological concepts, that will dismantle the narcissist's game. But beware, this is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about making the narcissist face something he avoids at all costs, his own fragility. So leave your like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because here you learn to protect yourself, to strengthen yourself, and to understand the human mind in a real way without beating around the bush. Now get ready, because in the first step, we will touch exactly where it hurts the most, the ego. The narcissist lives around an idealized image of himself. He constructs a social mask meticulously designed to hide the emptiness he feels inside. Everything revolves around this illusion of perfection. He needs to look superior, he needs to be admired, he needs to feel in control. Therefore, the first well-aimed blow you can make does not require shouting, arguing, or scandals. It requires silence and presence. You don't have to attack directly. The secret is to take away from him what feeds him the most: his emotional attention. Every time you react with anger, frustration, or despair, you're delivering exactly what he wants. Because deep down, it feeds on its imbalance. He observes his reactions, his fears, his insecurities, and is strengthened by it. Therefore, the first step is to break this cycle of emotional supply. The most powerful weapon against the narcissist is strategic indifference. Don't confuse this with coldness or ignoring the person altogether. It's much more subtle and much more effective. You look him in the eye, listen to what he says, but you don't get emotionally involved. You don't justify yourself, you don't try to please, you don't defend yourself. You just exist there without giving him the stage he needs so much. This posture destabilizes the narcissist deeply. Remember, he needs a stage. Without an audience, the show ends. And at that moment, something begins to change. He feels like he's losing control. He will try to provoke you, test your limits, create emotional traps. But the longer you stay centered, the more it falls apart. And here's the key: you need to learn to master your own reactivity. This is something that Jung often addressed. He said that what affects us deeply reveals where we are still prisoners. If the narcissist still has the power to get you off track, it's because there's something inside that needs to be healed. This first step, then, is both external and internal. You're quietly giving emotional responsibility back to them, but at the same time, you're reconnecting with your own center. This emotional disconnect does not mean insensitivity. On the contrary, it is an extreme demonstration of emotional intelligence. It means that you understand the game but refuse to participate in it on the other's terms. It means that you have chosen to protect your energy and keep your dignity intact. And the impact of this is immediate. The narcissist begins to feel threatened. Without his mirror, without the reflection of greatness that he tries to project, he finds himself facing something he does not know how to deal with: emptiness itself. And that's when he begins to show the true weaknesses that he has always tried to hide. Because when he can't manipulate you anymore, he loses his ground. Now, watch carefully. He will try to change the strategy. He can become aggressive, he can try to seduce you again, he can even play the victim. All to regain control. But if you stay focused, you'll notice how each new attempt of his only reveals more and more of the fragility behind the mask. And that's when you start to turn the tables for real. Because the narcissist, when he realizes that you no longer react as before, begins to be forced to confront something he hates: his own insignificance without the other. But that's just the beginning. In the next step, we'll explore how to use language, verbal and body, to make the narcissist question everything they believe themselves to be. Hey, my friend, The impact goes far beyond the surface. When silence begins to bother the narcissist, he is faced with a real threat, the loss of control over you. And it is precisely at this moment that you introduce the second layer of the strategy, and it is as powerful as it is subtle. You start using doubt as a weapon. The narcissist stands tall thanks to a false certainty of superiority. He believes, with all his strength, that he is more intelligent, more charismatic, more desired. But what happens when you plant a seed of uncertainty in this soil? Something simple. He begins to falter. You don't have to directly tell him that he's wrong. This would only activate his defense. Instead, use ambiguous sentences, small comments that are seemingly harmless, but that generate discomfort. Something like, "Interesting is your point of view. There are people who see it in a completely different way." Or even, "You know that sometimes it seems like you try to overprove something that should be natural?" These phrases do not accuse. They do not confront. But they do exactly what you want. They take the narcissist out of their comfort zone. Suddenly, he no longer knows if you are on his side or against him. And for someone who constantly needs to be validated, this is a real psychological hell. Body language also comes into play here. As he speaks, keep a calm but slightly skeptical expression. Don't be impressed, don't get emotional, don't overreact. Make him realize that the charm he once exerted on you, it no longer works. This creates a devastating internal crisis, because the narcissist measures their worth from the impact they have on people. And when that impact wears off, he begins to doubt himself. Carl Jung said that what we deny subjugates us, and what we accept transforms us. And in this game, that's exactly what happens. By denying the narcissist the confirmation they expect, you force them to look inward, and that's the most uncomfortable place for them. He may even try to maintain the pose, but inside, he begins to fragment. Doubt, when used well, is not destructive. It is transformative, because it takes the person out of the illusion. And that's exactly what you're doing, pushing the narcissist out of the bubble where they feel invincible. With each loose sentence, with each neutral look, with each response that neither confirms nor denies, you are putting a mirror before it. But this time, it's not the mirror he controls. It's yours. And this doubt, this constant tension, begins to generate a powerful side effect. The narcissist begins to pursue his validation. He, who once felt above, now wants her approval. He tries to impress you, win you back, prove that he still has influence over you. But the more he tries, the more vulnerable he becomes. And that, for him, is unbearable. It is at this point that the game is completely reversed. The narcissist, who once manipulated, now becomes the manipulated. But calm down, it's not time to celebrate yet. Because when he feels like he's missing out, he can become unpredictable. It can lead to emotional blackmail, extreme victimization, or even direct confrontation. This is when you need to keep your cool head. Because in the next step, you'll learn to use time and space as strategic allies. And when you know how to disappear the right way, he will never see you the same way again. When the narcissist begins to realize that he has lost emotional control and that his attempts at reassurance have had no effect, he goes into a state of alert. It is at this exact point that you activate one of the most perplexing strategies, tactical disappearance. Disappearing, in this context, is not simply blocking or ignoring. It is a calculated move which aims to break the dynamics of emotional dependence created by him. The narcissist, like a psychological predator, gets used to finding you always in the same emotional place, available, predictable, reactive. When you disappear without warning, without drama, without justification, he panics silently. Strategic disappearance creates a void, a hole where there was once the certainty of his presence. And for the narcissist, nothing is more terrifying than the vacuum of indifference. It's as if you pulled the rug out from under him without saying a word. He doesn't know where you are, what you're thinking, if you're going to come back, and this absence of response is unbearable for someone who lives in control. Carl Jung reminds us that the encounter with the other is only possible when there is inner separation. And that's exactly what you're building. You're separating yourself emotionally, creating a new version of yourself that no longer revolves around the manipulations of others. You withdraw from the game, but not as an escape, but as a form of internal repositioning. In this disappearance, there is no fight, there is no scene. There is only silence. And that silence screams. The narcissist begins to revisit all interactions, trying to understand where he lost you. He may try to tease you, send you messages, use other people to pull your attention back. But the secret is to stand firm. Don't respond, don't react, don't come back yet. During this time off the radar, something powerful happens. You begin to reconnect with those who are outside of his influence. It regains clarity, strength, and, above all, emotional autonomy. Because only when you step back can you see the cycle clearly. And this awareness is liberating. From a psychological point of view, tactical disappearance activates the narcissist's fear of abandonment. Although he never shows it directly, this fear exists. He fears insignificance. He fears being forgotten. He fears he no longer has control over how he is seen. And his absence forces him to face all this head-on. But beware, this movement is not an empty power game. It's not about hurting, it's about protecting yourself. You disappear because you need space to strengthen yourself. And when, and if, you decide to reappear, it will be under new terms. Because now, he already knows that you have a card that he can't control: silence. And the most surprising thing is that when you reappear, the impact is even greater than that of absence. Because now you come back different. More centered, more aware, less available. And it is in this new scenario that you can apply the next step with surgical precision. In the next step, we'll explore how to use the narcissist's own internal contradiction to destabilize them even more, by confronting them with what they most try to avoid: the conflict between the image they project and the truth they hide. And when he's forced to face that mirror, the mask begins to crack for good. When you come back, the narcissist realizes that something has changed. He feels, even if he can't explain it, that he has lost ground. And it is exactly at this moment that you introduce the fourth strategy: use his internal contradiction as a weapon. The narcissist lives in eternal conflict between the image he builds for the world and who he really is. He projects a self-assured, confident, admirable persona, but this facade hides deep insecurities, unresolved traumas, and fragile self-esteem. And the more he tries to maintain the appearance of perfection, the more he has to deny everything that makes him human. This is where you come in. In a subtle way, you begin to highlight these contradictions. Not with accusations, but with delicate remarks, rhetorical questions, loose comments that put him in front of his own hypocrisy. Imagine the power of a simple, "Funny, you talk so much about integrity, but last week you seemed to act very differently from that, right?" Or, "You always say that you don't care about other people's opinions, but you always want to prove something." These small sparks ignite internal fires in the narcissist. He is forced to revisit attitudes, speeches, and postures that contradict the character he created. And worse, he realizes that you are seeing what he tries to hide: the fragile, incoherent human side. This type of confrontation, when well applied, is devastating to his ego. Carl Jung talked about the process of individuation, the way to integrate light and shadow within us. The narcissist, however, denies this integration. He rejects the shadow, he rejects pain, he rejects error. So, when you bring up these points of incoherence, he finds himself in crisis. The tension between what he shows and what he is begins to become untenable. But be careful, you are not trying to cure him or make him change. That is not his role. His goal here is to protect his sanity and subtly expose the game he's been playing. Every time you put one of these contradictions on the table, you destabilize the narrative he tries to sell. And he feels this as a real threat because it directly touches on the core of his false identity. You will notice the reactions. He may try to turn the tables on you, accuse you of the same faults, distort facts, or even play the victim, all to divert the focus and regain control. But now, you've learned not to fall into the trap of reactivity. You listen, breathe, and return with something even more disconcerting: another mirror. The key is to always get him to question himself, not to accuse him. Because when the conflict comes from within, it is much more powerful. It begins to fragment because it cannot sustain its own mask. And this crack is the beginning of the collapse. You'll notice that at this point, the narcissist can go into intense self-defense mode. You can try to walk away, you can pretend you don't care anymore, you can even act like you're the unstable one in the relationship. But all these are attempts to escape the internal crisis that you, with strategy and awareness, helped to provoke. And now that the mask is cracking, you can take the final step. The most liberating. Because the time has come to end the cycle with dignity, without guilt, without doubt, and to make the narcissist realize for the first time that they no longer have any kind of power over you. In the next and final step, we will show you how to get out of the narcissist's life in such a definitive and elegant way that he will never be able to erase your presence or recover from its absence. Now that the narcissist is exposed, fragmented, and destabilized, the most important moment of all arrives, the definitive closure. But here we are not talking about simply cutting ties. We're talking about going out with elegance, firmness, and awareness, something that not only ends the cycle, but completely redefines how you see yourself and how you'll be remembered. The definitive exit does not happen with scandals or long explanations. It happens with quiet clarity. When you decide to leave, you're not just abandoning a toxic relationship. He is affirming with actions that his peace is worth more than any attempt at control. You don't beg, you don't justify, you don't explain yourself. You simply choose yourself. And here's the bottom line. The narcissist needs the last word. He lives off it. He wants you to react, cry, beg, scream, or at least show regret. Any emotion he manages to elicit from you will be interpreted as a sign that he still has power. So the deepest blow you can take, it is to leave in absolute silence, with a solid presence and elevated posture. You leave without anger, without hatred, without guilt. He leaves with dignity, because you've seen it all. You get the hang of the game. He has already realized that there is nothing left to fight or save. Carl Jung said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making darkness conscious. And now, after all you've faced, you see that darkness clearly, and that's why you can choose the light. The narcissist, when he realizes that you are truly gone, will be taken by silent despair. He will try to reverse, reappear, test his limits one last time. But if you hold your ground, something breaks forever inside him. The certainty that he could manipulate you again. And the most liberating thing is that, at this moment, you no longer need to prove anything. Its absence is already proof. Its evolution speaks louder than any argument. You're not running away. It is transcending. And that's something the narcissist will never understand, because they're stuck in a cycle where control is more important than true connection. The definitive departure is not a gesture against him. It is an act of love for you. It's you saying, enough, I deserve more. And the most beautiful thing about it all is that, by leaving like this, with balance and awareness, you make room for a new life. A life where you are the protagonist of your own story. Where your emotions are not hijacked. Where your self-esteem does not depend on anyone's validation. This choice, this firm and silent decision, transforms not only the dynamic between you, but the way you relate to yourself. And that's too powerful to ignore. Because when you understand that you don't need to react to assert yourself, that you don't need to respond to exist, you become impenetrable to any kind of manipulation. And this is where we end the 5 steps. But the real end is yet to come. Because everything you've learned so far has prepared you for the most transformative moment. Completion. A final dive into Jung's lessons, his healing journey, and the real impact his change has not only on the narcissist, but on his own future. Now take a deep breath. Because in the next and final excerpt, you will understand why this walk was much more than a silent revenge. It was the beginning of a deep liberation. We have reached the end of this journey. A journey that goes far beyond manipulating or torturing a narcissist. What you have learned here is not a simple emotional revenge, but a path of reconnection with your own inner strength. Because, in the end, the real power was never in making the other suffer, but rather to stop suffering because of it. With the 5 steps, you deconstructed a manipulation structure that seemed unshakable. You used silence as a shield, doubt as a tool, disappearance as a strategy, contradiction as a mirror, and finally your exit as a definitive act of liberation. All this without shouting, without lowering oneself, without playing the same dirty game. And that's the real victory. Carl Jung taught us that what we deny in ourselves enslaves us, and that only by bringing light to the shadow can we become whole. The narcissist lives denying his own shadow, trying to control the world around him so as not to face the internal pain. You, on the other hand, chose to do it differently. You chose to look within, recognize what was holding you back, and, with courage, break the cycle. You are no longer the same person who entered this relationship. And if he has come this far, it is because he has already begun to awaken something within himself that the narcissist will never be able to understand. Consciousness. You now know how to identify the emotional games, the patterns of control, the cycles of abuse. And more than that, now you know how to say no without guilt, you know how to disappear without justifying yourself, you know how to leave without getting lost. The most impactful thing about all of this is that, by freeing yourself, you break not only the influence of a specific narcissist, but a whole emotional chain that may have been repeating itself for years in your life. Relationships based on fear, dependence, guilt, they all begin to lose ground. Because you have understood that your peace is not for sale. And yes, the narcissist will feel it. You will remember. Go try. But he will never find in anyone else what he found in you, because now you are no longer the same. And this transformation is what really destabilizes him, because he can lose admirers, followers, even partners. But when he loses someone awake, someone he saw behind the mask, he loses something he can never regain: control. So don't look back in anger. Look wisely. The pain you went through was real, but it was also the gateway to your evolution. The narcissist was the trigger, but you were the answer. And now that you have the tools, you can move forward not as a victim, but as someone who has chosen to grow in spite of everything. If this content helped you open your eyes, share it with someone who also needs to wake up. And if you want to continue receiving deep reflections like this, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and join this community of people who are freeing themselves, step by step, from the emotional prison. Because knowledge liberates, but consciousness transforms.